Hey, everybody. Welcome to the NYC Real Estate Podcast. I'm Mark Levine. I'm your host. I'm also one of the owners of EBMG, property management company here in New York City. We have a really exciting show for you today. But before I get into that and introduce our guest, let me just remind you that you could email the show at nycrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's nycrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. I think this is episode 52 or so. So we've been around for quite a long time. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Normally I go through, have an expert on to go through the different real estate rules and regulations and anything that may hit your buildings in the city, in the general five boroughs. But today I'm starting something new, which is called a Know Your Neighbor podcast. And we manage so many buildings with so many incredibly interesting people in them, ranging from all sorts of walks of life. And in one of our buildings, we have Peter Hurley, who's a really well-known photographer who I've been following for years. So Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So you're our first guest in this series, which hopefully I'll be doing over, a period of time. And I don't know, for those people that don't know you, I've been following you for years. And then when I saw that you were in one of our buildings, I was like, oh, this might be a good opportunity to reach out and do something cool with you. So I'll ask you all about like how you got into photography and everything, but just so that like we set the table. Yeah, I do real estate, but on the side, for a while I had a real estate and like food photography company because I was doing some other stuff in like the food and TV business out on Long Island. So it really was kind of capturing there. And at that time, I was trying to like suck up as much information as I could on photography, like deep dive. So I was watching you. I was watching, I don't know if you know Jared Polin. I was watching Von Wong. Like there were all these people that were just putting out all these like amazing content.
I'm friends with those guys.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So I was really like probably 5 or 6 years ago, like really all in. And then I just decided, you know what, it's for me, real estate was growing and I just had to take a back seat with kids and all that. So I had to choose and I chose. Cool. So tell me about you. I know that's a big ask, but I know that you were like the backstory was that you were training for the Olympics and that's how you started going off into that segued you into where you are now. But if you want to give kind of a quick background on how that started, that's fascinating.
Sure. I mean, first of all, I'm honored to be the first one on this new idea that you have. And it's super cool. And I think the coincidence of you knowing, get emails from you for like however long you've been managing the building, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I know who you are. I was like, that's so cool. I was excited. I was like, oh man. Anyway, I'm a photographer. I have a studio 2 blocks away from my home in Chelsea, which I love. My wife was like, well, why don't we just move into a place that's bigger and you can have your studio in the home? And I was like, I like going out to the streets of New York and walking my 2 blocks. Like, I love it. I like being here late at night and then going home and being close enough that, I go home for lunch. I like, and I'll forget something all the time. So I'm always going back and forth. So I like being away and being in the city. I grew up in Jersey and I raced sailboats on the Jersey Shore, little town called Maniloking. And I was afraid of the big bad city. I was like, I'm never going in there. No way. And then I ended up going to Boston for school, and it was a great segue into, a city. I was like, oh, this isn't that scary. I like Boston. Boston's cool. Let me, move into the city after I'm done here. I mean, that was kind of the thought process. I ended up training for the Olympics in the boat that I sail is called a laser. Well, it was then called it's called an Ilka dinghy. Now they had to change the name, but I still sail the boat, but I was able to travel the world sailing, and I made the United States sailing team in 2000. And then at the same time, Polo was looking for real sailors to do an ad campaign. So I showed up in these magazines all over the world, and I finished the sailing and I came to New York, and I was like, all right, well, I got pictures in magazines. I'm going to try this modeling thing. Yeah. And it went well for a while. And the photographer who took the polo shots of me, he's like, why don't you pick up a camera? And I was like, by that point, I was the model, actor, bartender dude that couldn't make ends meet in the city, living in a 5th floor walk up. I was like, that you do not go back upstairs after you go down. It's raining, I'm just going to get soaked today.
That's why it's easier to have a face for radio like me. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. So, long story short, I picked up a camera in about around 2000. Actually, in 2000, I decided to go pro, and it's been an awesome ride.
It's
And I love
amazing.
doing it. I got a studio in LA, and I have one here, and I go back and forth, and I still race sailboats, and I coach photographers globally on headshot photography. So I own the biggest coaching platform.
The
I have
headshot
about
crew.
20, the headshot crew. I got about
Yeah.
20,000 photographers on it. So it's
Wow.
pretty cool. Yeah.
That's amazing. I always think about life in terms of little moments that pivot you away from something and just set you on a trajectory. And for you, that was at that time when you decided to go pro and when you needed it. But I'm sure everybody else has, stories like that. So you've been doing that. I feel you on I think you made the right decision because I work from home. So I'm here 24 hours a day, except when I'm like picking up my kids and dropping them off to school.
Yeah.
And sometimes you want to, I want to jump out of a window sometimes
Yeah.
because you can't escape it. So I think having a place where you can go is so much, like, mental health wise, so much better. Even if it's just 2 blocks, it's still 2 blocks that you could get out of your own way.
Yeah. Well, during the pandemic, my wife's like, all right, we got to get out of here. Everybody's getting out of here. And I was like, I don't want to go away from my studio. I mean, nobody was coming in and I wasn't photographing anybody, but this is like my sanctuary. I was like, I don't want to go like out to Jersey to my dad's house and like hang out there and like be bored out of my mind when I
Yeah.
could be in the studio archiving or doing work or doing something. So we stayed and it all worked out okay. But yeah, it was like, it's my place.
So we do obviously property management, and one of the things that we deal day to day grind in, with the boards. And I know you are just a unit owner at this point. You were on the board previously, right, of your
Yeah.
building?
Yeah.
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 And would you ever see yourself getting back on a board after having gone through that process? And like, it's obviously different when you live somewhere and you're not on the board versus living
I,
somewhere and being on the board.
I feel like when I'm not on the board, I'm like being left out of something, and I'm like. But then when I was on the board, I was like, "Whoa, this is a big time commitment and a lot of decisions that have to be made building wise." So I enjoyed my time on the board, but then I think it was time for. I was just super busy.
Yeah.
A few board members did ask me to come back, so maybe I'll go back. I mean, I think the health of the building. I love my building. Like, I don't think I don't want to ever leave there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe one day I will. But my wife's trying to get me to go and put the studio in the apartment. I'm like, I like this whole operation. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think being on the board is important. I think especially when these things arise and just being in the know. So
Yeah.
I did enjoy that part of it for sure. And we had a really cool team of board members when I was on it. And
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the other thing that I don't know the people in the building fluctuate. Like, people are coming and going. I don't know who's selling, who's sold, who's
Right.
renting, when the renter, like if there's renters or if they're owners now, and how long are they going to be there? Are they transit? Should I befriend these people that I see in the elevator? I mean, it's just interesting.
I know in condos, especially, it's more transitionary where you have a lot of people that are just investors in the building and you have the renters there. So it's a little bit tougher than in a co-op where it's a lot more strict in terms of subletting. So you have more of a community feel. And I think that's always the push that we've seen. So I know that you do, obviously, your headshots and your portraits are like probably the real focus of your business, right? Do you do any other type of photography at this point, or is that where you're focusing?
You know what? You won't, it's very hard to catch me out of my studio with a camera. Like, I feel like I'm weird. Like, when I was ever with Bruce Weber, who was the photographer who told me to pick up the camera and shot this stuff of me, he always had a camera around his neck. Like, he was always walking around with a camera. And like my friends in my other life, my sailing life, when I'm on the road, I'm about to go on a big trip. They never see, like, they're like, we never see you with a camera. So I'm just very focused on the genre that I do, which is portraiture. And I'm so into it that I'm very picky about it. So I'm like, I just don't find the time to take. I'm accumulating so many pictures to take them on my own as a hobby or something it's not really for me. Like with the sailing I do, just it's kind of the same way. Like I get asked people ask me all the time, hey, I want to take you sailing. Let's go on this boat. Let's go out on the water. And I'm like, I will not step foot in in a boat or on the water unless I'm racing. Like I'm going to race. Like I'm either competing or I'm not going. And like, there's no way. And
there's no pleasure cruises for you.
yeah. With the photography, it's either going down in the studio the way I'm doing my work, or it's not happening. And it's kind of strange. Like I got invited. I'm sponsored by Canon, and I get to do really cool stuff. Like, well, here's one. I make some exceptions. One of them is I'm a big football fan, so I'm a fan of the NFL, and I got invited to shoot some NFL games. That's awesome. I've never shot sports in my life, and most of the photographers know me, so I get. But I don't. I guess in the photography community, people know me, so I'm on the sidelines, and the photographers that are doing their job, like the sports, like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I got invited, and I'll stay out of your way. You take the pictures. But I'm getting better at it, and my friends are giving me tips. Like the guy, one of my friends, Terrell, is his name's Terrell Lloyd. He's the photographer for the 49ers. So my first game was I'm a Giants fan, was a Giants 49ers game. And I got to shoot it. And then I asked him, okay, tell me how to do all this. Like, and he gave me like a 5-minute little talk, and that didn't help me at all. You really have to do it. So then I got to shoot a friend of mine is a coach on the Washington Commanders now, and I get to shoot them. So I try to go when the Giants are playing them, but then he's like, you can't root for the Giants now because I invited you to come, and the Commanders like my work, so they're like, you can come anytime you want. So I'm in this kind of like, geez, what did I get myself into? But I don't charge for that, so that's really like, that's the one time. And sometimes I'll take my camera and shoot some professional sailing stuff. But other than that, it's all in the studio.
I actually have a funny Giants story. When it was right after Saquon Barkley's rookie year, when he won the Rookie of the Year, he did this kids camp in Jersey. And I took both my kids. It was a full weekend camp with Saquon, and my son at the time, he's 9 now. So it was before COVID. He's probably about 6 or even 5. And we did this whole thing, and I surprised him. He didn't even know that we were going to meet Saquon for that weekend. And when I say he was like the biggest fan, he was like, every day he was like, can we go meet Saquon? Can we go try to find his house? Like, he was that big of a fan. So awesome. I surprised him when we got there. And then my daughter, because there was this camp of about 700 kids, there were only 11 girls. So City Financial was the sponsor, and they said, you know what, we're going to shoot this. They contacted me a few weeks before. We're going to shoot this video with Saquon, and it's about females in sports. Would you be interested in having your daughter participate and like have more of an upgraded experience where he would spend a lot of time with them? They would interview him, he would interview them. And I was like, okay, what's the charge? Because I was like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm like, no, it's free. Like, because we already had paid for the camp and we were already like in there. So we did this whole thing. We spent the whole week. I mean, as we have signed everything. I have pictures of like my kids would say, I mean, it was like we had lunch with him, and to say you think that he's like a nice guy, but I always say like he's 10 times nicer than you actually think that he is. Like, he's portrayed as a nice person, but I mean, the level of like care that he gave those kids during that weekend was amazing. So that's always I have a good Giant story on that.
I love hearing that stuff. Everybody asks me about celebrities and if they're nice or not. And I just think, well, first of all, Saquon's got to come back this year.
I hope so.
He's got to get the job done, and he does appear nice, in the media, and you seem like he's a nice guy. So to hear that he's nicer than I even think he is just awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, we were playing with his little 1-year-old daughter at that time, so we had like the full Saquon experience. He won't remember us now, but for that time. And my daughter, she won the camper of the year, like of the weekend, and she has a whole like she was called up in front of the entire camp. She got the signed everything and pictures with him, so that was great.
That's awesome.
Have you released any books about your headshots, or is it all pretty much just kept online?
Yeah, I have my book here somewhere. Where's my book? I don't have it in arms. Usually I have it in arm's reach. I do. I have a book called The Headshot. It's for photographers on how to take headshots, pretty much. So I wrote it in 2015, which seems like eons ago.
Yeah,
I guess it was. But the everything in it's still valid. I just tweak things. So now I could probably rewrite and update it. But I think writing a book is probably the hardest thing I ever did. I trained for 2 Olympic Games, and I think writing the book was harder.
Wow.
I think it was so hard. I was like, I don't know.
At
This
what
is
age
this.
did you start sailing?
I was 6. I was 6, and yeah, I just took a liking to it. And then the Jersey Shore just fosters these sailors that most of the guys I competed against were from Florida or Southern California, and they sailed all year. So
Yeah.
we in Jersey, we sail till it gets cold, and then you do a little bit of frostbiting maybe, but I think in the summers we try and make up for it. So the Jersey sailors are really good.
Yeah. Now, did your parents also sail, or was this something that you just fell into?
No, my dad was training for the Olympics as well when he was in his 20s, I think. And yeah, he was the 64 Olympics. He was a North American champion in 1964, and he had done the same thing. So when I graduated from BU, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I ended up winning a national championship. And I asked him, I was like, "Look, the boat I sail is in the Olympics. Can I go for it?" He's like, "All right, let's see what you could do. Make a run at it." But he didn't make it. I didn't make it. I made the U.S. team, which is like the top 5 guys in the country. But then only the first guy went. So I didn't win the Olympic trust. So I didn't get to go. But I trained in Sydney in 2000. But the funny thing is I'm so into it still, and I've just stayed really good. And right now I'm ranked first in North America.
Really?
Out of everybody. Yeah. And only because I think the US team right now is diverting their attention in different ways. So a lot of the guys that are competing, that are training for the Olympics now, didn't sail all these regattas. And I just am a regatta crazy person, and I go to every single one. So I'm going to be ranked first in North America, which qualifies me for the World Championship next year in the Netherlands. So but in the boat I sail, you got to be really in shape and really tiny, and I'm usually too big. I love it, but I usually sail against the master guy, like the guys my age. In my age group, I've been second in the world 3 times.
Wow.
But I just got third at the U.S. Nationals amongst all ages, so I'm still competitive. It's just, and that's the thing, that's the bug, I guess, that I still want to get out there and do it. Then people are I have a big social media following. So I always post my sailing, I post my photography and stuff. But people are always saying, like, how much do you get paid for that? Like, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is my money pit. Like, I gotta say, I got boats going all over the place. I'm driving to Minnesota with a boat behind the car on Tuesday.
Wow. Do you have any sponsors on that side? I know you're sponsored by Canon on the photography side.
No. Yeah, the sponsor is the Headshot Crew. I should put it on my sail.
I'm feeling so lazy right now. I have to get to the gym. Okay. Well, I don't want to take up so much more of your time. I really appreciate you coming on and, just having a chat with me. I think, as I said, I've been following for probably 7 to 10 years, maybe even longer at this point. I was there when I think you went through like a health challenge for yourself where you were getting back into shape a few years ago.
Yeah, I did do that. So I was 230 pounds. I think I stopped sailing. I got out of shape. I was just taking pictures, and I pinched a nerve in my neck. And I was like, this is not good. None of this is good. And I was going to physical therapy, and when I trained for the Olympics, I weighed 185 pounds, and that was a little bit heavy for the boat back then, but now that's the right weight. I think around 185.
Yeah.
And I was 230 pounds. So I was like, if I want to sail this boat again, I have to get to 185. So 1 year the master age group is 45 to 55. So I'm 52 now. I was 45 and I was 230 pounds on New Year's Eve. I weighed myself. I took a picture of it, and then I documented this whole journey.
Yep.
So I find that, and people can understand this, if I put myself out there publicly because of accountability. Like, I know that if I don't tell people I'm doing something,
right,
I'm going to fail somewhere. It's not going to happen. But I was like, all right, I'm going to document this. I'm going to put it out there on social. I'm going to let everybody know that I'm going to lose this weight. So I have these pictures. Every month I took a picture of myself. And on July 10th, I had to weigh 185 to go to the World. And I did. I got from 230 to 185. And then I sailed in the World Championship and I got second. So.
Wow. Well,
it was cool.
Yeah. Well, I was there with you behind the scenes. You didn't know it, but I was watching.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. if
Well,
you
I
ever
think
need
it's so
anything.
interesting that you're doing it. Like just to talk to, what especially to know New Yorkers. What do New Yorkers do? I mean, I'm sure there's other sailors that live in the city of New York, but for me, like people are like, why do you live in the city if you're sailing all the time? I was like,
Right.
I don't know. I'm a photographer. I'm like, I need to be in the city. I need to be in my studio. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. So I'd be interested to hear who else you get to speak to, and I
I
think.
have some thoughts. We have some very famous people that live in the buildings. We have some very just mundane people and normal, normal jobs. And I think that there's a lot of normal jobs that are interesting too. And they're, sometimes you take the person versus the job. And I think there's a lot of interesting actuaries out there that just, they're buried behind the title of their work, but they all live in our buildings. We have probably about close to 10,000 units that we're managing. So you imagine
Oh my gosh.
it's a lot.
Holy smokes.
So Peter, you can go to peterhurley.com to check out Peter's work and get all of his social information over there. There's on the homepage, you could link out to Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, all that stuff. Peter, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And, since you are one of our resident and unit owners, if you ever need anything, you could go straight to the top for me if you need anything.
I'm going to hit you.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.